This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. As always, Tolliver is here. Tolliver, we are days away from the new year. Do you have any resolutions planned?
I sure do. I'm going to finally start going to the gym. I'm not going to go in, but I'm going to stand outside.
Just stand outside.
Selling supplements.
You know, after our conversation last week about what made people happy, and we heard a lot about how social media doesn't make them happy, I'm going to yet again try to use a lot less social media. Last year, I put a 20-minute limit on Instagram use per day.
Wow.
Which actually cut my usage down a lot. I realized how useless it is to just doom scroll Instagram.
I'm in like 4 hours.
Anyway, it has been a very busy year in the news. We've covered a lot of it right here on The Middle. The wars in Ukraine and Israel and Gaza, inflation, opioids. There's been no shortage of important national and international news. But what about in your community? What was the biggest story where you live? That's what we're asking this hour. You can reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com. Before I introduce our guests, last week we asked what made you happy in 2023. What a fun show that was. We got so many heartening calls and plenty of voicemails too after the show. Take a listen.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Rader. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
My name is Nadine. I live just outside of Toledo, Ohio.
Hi, Jeremy. This is Jerry Cares in Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
Hi, Jeremy. My name is Dina Jonak, and I'm calling from Cape Coral, Florida. My 2 golden doodle puppies made my year so happy.
I'm a social worker. I changed to a job where I was doing more direct practice from administration. This is the best decision I think I've ever made in my life.
The thing that made me happiest this year was the birth of my very first grandchild. I am 67 years old, so I have been waiting quite a long time.
I'm happy that I survived a broken back and then colon cancer. I stopped asking why me, and I started asking why not me. And it gave me a renewed faith and a belief in the beauty of life and love.
Thanks to everyone who called in. So this hour, again, we want to know what was the most important story in your community this year, whether it's local politics or a major crime story. What made the biggest impact where you live? Joining us from Nashville Public Radio, Khalil Ekulona, host of This is Nashville. Khalil, welcome to The Middle.
Jeremy, it's nice to be with you again. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. From Boise State Public Radio in Idaho, Gemma Gaudette, host of Idaho Matters, is with us. Gemma, welcome to you.
Well, thank you so much. Good to be here with you.
And from KCUR in Kansas City, Brian Ellison. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Jeremy. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Well, and we are going to get to each of you throughout this show and ask you about what the most or one of the most important stories was this year where you are. I'm going to start with Khalil in Nashville. Khalil, what would you say was the most important story in your area this year?
There were quite a few. A lot of Nashvillians would argue and say that the new Titan Stadium deal was a big issue. There were overwhelming disapproval for that, I'd say, from most Nashvillians. However, I have to point to the tragic school shooting that took place on March 27th at the Covenant School, where 6 people lost their lives, 3 adults and 3 students. The shooter, the assailant, the alleged assailant, also lost their life and was killed then. That was the biggest story to really hit the state because there was a lot of fallout to come from that.
Made national news. I mean, it became a political story as well. We remember they called them the Tennessee Three, came out of that, right?
Yes, Representatives Justin Jones from Nashville, Justin J. Pearson from Memphis, and Gloria Johnson from Knoxville were 3 state house representative members who protested. I mean, after the shooting, it was such a shock to the entire community. I host a daily show here in Nashville called This is Nashville, and we heard the news just before, and we were trying to decide, do we stop the show that we had planned to cover this? We did come to it later on in the week and subsequently in the weeks after we discussed it, but it really shook the city to its core, and thousands of students and people came to the state capitol. They were finishing up the legislative session to protest for the state representatives and lawmakers to finally do something about gun safety. That is where Representatives Johnson, Pearson, and Jones went along with the protesters, grabbed the bullhorns, were screaming from the House floor. They were repudiated and reprimanded by their colleagues. Eventually, within 1 week, there was a vote to expel the members. Justin Jones and Justin Pearson, both happened to be young, both happened to be African-American males, were expelled from the House. Gloria Johnson, an older white woman, was spared expulsion by 1 vote, let's say.
Why do you think that was, by the way, that she was spared expulsion, but they were? I mean, you say both happened to be African-American. Is that why?
We can look at that, we can speculate and look at that and potentially say that that's why. Who knows? I know that both Justin Johnson and Justin Pearson were basically freshmen in the state house, and Gloria Johnson had been there for some time. So she may have had relationships with some of her colleagues. And one of them, let's all put this under context. It's a super majority in the state legislature. So heavily Republican, heavily conservative, as opposed to not that many Democrats in there. She may have had a relationship. There may have been one person in a secret vote ballot to say, hey, I don't want to expel her. But it made them international stars. I saw them on the BBC talking about this.
Yeah. Now, you're in Tennessee. You say it's a super Republican majority. Our other guests, Brian and Gemma, are both also in very red states, right? Missouri and Idaho.
Yeah, that is definitely the case. And every significant incident of violence or of intense conflict does result in that kind of playing out on the legislative front. In Kansas City, one of the big topics this year and for the last several years, Jeremy, has been the state's control of the police board. It's the only American city where the city does not control its own board of police commissioners. It's actually a state board appointed by the governor. That dates back, I don't know, 75 years or something. But local efforts to change that have continued to fail. And we've had a number of incidents as well where the police conduct has been questioned. And of course, the result is that again and again, people say we in the local community can't do anything about that because it's under a state-appointed board's control. And of course, that raises those partisan issues you raised as well, Jeremy, that Kansas City is a bluer city in a very red state.
This was just one of many mass shootings this year, as happens every year. We had the terrible shooting in Lewiston, Maine, the shooting in Monterey Park, California, and many others. But in Tennessee, after this, with all the national news that was made about the Tennessee Three, Khalil, there weren't any big gun control measures passed.
No, there weren't, much to the, I think, disappointment and dismay to a lot of Tennesseans. I'm not just going to say Nashvillians or Democrats. I'm going to say Tennesseans because, under a lot of pressure, Governor Bill Lee called for a special legislative session. They had that. I think there was reported that the House and the Senate took different approaches. The House was going to take up 28 bills and measures to address gun safety. The Senate decided to only take up 4. There was infighting within the chambers, each individual chamber themselves, as far as what they would work and push to get done. But not much happened. At the end of the day, they only passed 4 things. A bill to strengthen Tennessee Bureau of Investigation background checks before storing guns. They offered gun owners an incentive for the safe storage of guns, either for gun locks or gun safes, because another issue as far as gun safety that's been happening out here in Tennessee, particularly in Nashville, is that a lot of guns are being stolen from cars. People leave their guns in their glove compartment or under their seat or sometimes on their seat or their dashboard, and those guns are taken and stolen. They approved $50 million for mental health facilities, a study on human rights violations, and $30 million for Tennessee colleges and universities for security upgrades. That was all. This is in the face of, mind you, again, thousands, this is not hyperbole, thousands of young people, school-aged kids, came out to protest, and a lot of family members, a lot of people, their constituents, people who know them.
There's some comments coming in online from listeners. Tolliver, what are we hearing?
Yeah, John in South Bend, Indiana writes, the most important event in 2023 for me is climate change. It was the hottest year on record. It will only get worse going forward. We are making very little or no progress on planet Earth. Climate change will cause more wars as we try to survive.
We had another comment come in before the show about climate change, and somebody was very happy that their community had put out a declaration about climate change. Gemma, you're in the state of Idaho. Is that an issue you think that people in your state are worried about and would call the most important issue of the year?
I don't know if every Idahoan would say it is the most important issue. However, similar, I think, to Nashville, Boise is a big blue dot in a very red state. And in the city of Boise, our mayor put a declaration in place that we will be carbon neutral by 2050. And it's happening. I mean, there is a lot of progress, at least within what we call the Treasure Valley. So it's Boise, Nampa, Meridian, all of the major cities, which has the largest population in the state. And it is something that I think if you look within the Treasure Valley, so southern Idaho, it is something that's important. I think that, let's go out to the remainder of the state. I think in some ways there are other issues top of mind for people. And I think there is still, that argument that people want to make even around climate change. And climate change is real. That is a hard pill to swallow for some people in Idaho. But in Boise, in the Treasure Valley, highly important.
There's another comment, Tolliver, coming in from Clarksville, Tennessee.
Yeah. Tim says, our big story was the tornado of December 9th, 2023, 2 years from the date of another devastating tornado that flattened nearby Mayfield, Kentucky. This event demonstrated that some things still bring a community together in empathy, and not only immediately, but with a long-tail commitment. I was actually in Tennessee for that.
Khalil, I mean, this is somebody saying the top story in Tennessee was a tornado.
That's another huge story that happened here as well. I was in town when it occurred, and we did a show on it the next day. And there's a wonderful group of people out here, volunteers. They call themselves Nashville Weather Service. Not the Nashville Severe Weather, and they're volunteers. They get on YouTube. They're formerly Twitter, now X. They have a channel. That's the first place you go when you hear of potential weather. He referred to that 2-year anniversary of the tornado in Kentucky, and he said, we can just get used to it due to climate change. Tornado seasons from December through April.
Well, I want to ask our guests to stand by. We've got calls coming up as we ask you what is the most important story in your area this year. And of course, Tolliver, we also want to ask our listeners on the podcast to please rate the podcast. Of course,
Absolutely.
A 5-star rating is appreciated.
The highest stars you can give.
The highest stars you can give. We'll be right back after this break.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically. Or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking you, what was the biggest story in your community this year? I'm joined by Khalil Ekulona at Nashville Public Radio, Gemma Gaudette at Boise State Public Radio, and Brian Ellison at KCUR in Kansas City. Tolliver, we're 14 shows in. I was going to ask if you've memorized our number, but we have a special number for our listeners to call for this New Year's Eve-ish episode. What is it?
I don't know either one. You can call us at 217-531-2019. That's 217-531-2019.
And as we wait for your calls, let's go to Gemma Gaudette in Boise. Your story of the year, Gemma, is also one that made national headlines. The murder of those 4 college students in Idaho, which happened just about a year ago right now, but the suspect has yet to go on trial.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Jeremy, it was in the early morning hours of November 13th of 2022 where the 4 college students were killed in an off-campus house. And then on December 30th of last year, Brian Koberger was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. He was at the time, he had just finished up his first semester of a PhD program at Washington State University. That's in Pullman, Washington. Pullman and Moscow are 8 miles apart. So very, very close together. He was extradited back to Idaho. And as you said, no, he has not gone to trial yet. However, in the last couple of days, prosecutors went to the judge in Latah County. Moscow's up in North Idaho. Asking for a trial date to be set in the summer after the University of Idaho is out for the year, but also that Moscow High School is out for the summer because the high school is adjacent to the courthouse. It's a small town. Mm-hmm. There's already parking issues. So they're hoping for a summer trial date. It will be 6 weeks they're asking for. With that said, one of the big issues that has come up in this is that the home where this happened, it today started being demolished.
Today.
Today, December 28th, today. Much to the upset of 2 of the families who are whose children were killed, Kaylee Gonsalves and Xana Coronato's family. In fact, they came out with a statement today really asking why. And their argument and their attorney's arguments has been, you are destroying evidence by allowing the demolition of this home to move forward. The FBI in October was at the home quite a bit. They took evidence, but when you think of a trial, right? Sometimes in murder cases in particular, sometimes juries go to that location. They do a walkthrough. That is not happening. The University of Idaho, in response, says, this is too difficult. This is so difficult for our students, for our community. We need to tear this down so we can start to move forward. And Jeremy, what people I think need to understand about this, it's not just the shock of it. It's not. I mean, there are so many podcasts. There are so many people that do so much around this, right? Idaho is small. Everyone somehow has some type of connection to this, right? Whether they went to the University of Idaho, whether they have kids at the University of Idaho, whether they knew any of these students at the University of Idaho, there are such ripple effects. I mean,
So that's why a year later now, this is still a story that you would say is the biggest story of the year in Idaho.
Absolutely. I mean, to the point, my own husband studied in that house all of the time during law school because one of his good friends lived in that house during law school. And that was more than 20 some years ago. There are so many connections, and it is difficult, I think, to live here and to honestly give it as much attention as a lot of these national outlets are giving, if that makes sense, because it is so personal. And especially as we sit here all waiting, when will a trial happen? What's next? And I think there's a feeling of a lot of victimization because it's taking so long. But with that said, Brian Kohberger, he gave up his right to a speedy trial back in August. He has the right to do that. He did that. That's why we're in this holding pattern in a lot of ways.
It is interesting, though, with all of the things that are going on in this world right now, from the war in Israel and Gaza, and the politics here in this country, and climate change and everything else. That as bad as those murders were, that is the thing that is just capturing people. It's like it. I mean, for people who don't know anybody directly, it's kind of a soap opera at this point, isn't it?
I would 100% agree with that statement. It's interesting because, as I mentioned, there is so much time that has been given to this, and I think part of it is that they were young, they were good looking, and there are it's the kind of that, and I think that we are all so obsessed with true crime in a way right now within our culture that this plays right into that. With that said, if you come to Idaho, was it the story of the year? Yes. Were there other major stories of the year that probably have even more impact on people?
Right.
Yes. And we, as at least here at our station at Boise State Public Radio, we really take a lot of time to decide: do we cover this? Do we not cover this? Because of the salaciousness of it, right? Do you just want to give it, flame to the fire, or do we report when it's necessary to report?
Brian Ellison.
Hearing these accounts, both from Khalil and from Gemma, of sort of a single criminal incident that became the story of the year, I'm thinking about one of the things that happened earlier this year in Kansas City, where a 16-year-old high school student named Ralph Yarl went to a door in Kansas City's Northland. He knocked on the door because he was there to pick up his twin brothers from a play date. Turns out he was at the wrong address. He was one block over, and an 84-year-old man named Andrew Lester shot Ralph Yarl through the screen door in the head, told him not to come back there. It was one incident. Ralph Yarl, who is black, has had a remarkable recovery health-wise. He's an honor student in his high school. People are really excited that he has lived through this and been able to tell this story. But the fact is that one incident became symbolic on so many levels of problems plaguing the community. Certainly racial tensions in the city, questions about whether the police investigation of this incident would have proceeded differently if it had been a black man shooting a white young person instead of the other way around. There's no clear plan for what Kansas City is doing to improve its statistics around gun violence. So I can see how these one incident stories become much bigger issues and much bigger stories.
Again, our number this hour is 217-531-2019. Again, 217-531-2019. Let's go to Janet, who is calling from Chicago. Janet, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm calling from Ellison, a neighborhood where recently we have a migrant shelter. And I think it was, it's an old warehouse. In October, we were told it's going to be about 400 people and expand to 1,000. Well, recently it's about 2,300 people.
Wow.
And right before Christmas, a little boy, he's 5 years old, he fell ill and he has since passed away. So it's, it's hard to see the crisis unfolding. And also we have a homeless encampment not too far that's been here for quite a while. So there's some tension between like, who do we help and how much help do we give? And so there's
and Janet, I assume this is because of like the governor of Texas, who's been sending migrants from the border up to places like Chicago.
Exactly.
And how do your neighbors and how do you feel about it? I mean, do you feel like you have a responsibility to help deal with this issue that the border states are dealing with, or do you feel like this is just a mess, or what do you think?
Well, I really feel everybody has a responsibility, and so it's not so much that I feel personally resentful or anything like that. It's more of how do we deal with the situation in the most humane and equitable way. And like I said, we do have a homeless population already. So it's just really hard to see people so vulnerable. It's kind of like, for me, a tipping point where, we need to take care of people. We can't have people living out on the street. And there's some migrants who would prefer to be out on the street than be in a shelter. So, so it's a big issue.
Well, Janet, I really appreciate your call. Thank you so much for that. I'll go to our panel. If any of you want to jump in on this, is this an issue that you're seeing in your cities with a lot of migrants coming in to either Kansas City, Boise, or Nashville?
I wouldn't say, Jeremy, that we have a rash of migrants coming in. We have a migrant population in the Treasure Valley. And what we also are dealing with, though, when the caller mentioned homelessness, that is something that we see here, and that has to do with the housing crisis, which I don't think is unique to Boise or to Idaho. But our housing prices have been skyrocketing, in particular during the pandemic, when people realized what they could buy in Idaho if they, worked remotely. So we had a huge influx of people. In fact, a report just came out today that Idaho is second in the nation for the 7th year in a row when it comes to growth per capita. We continue to grow, and our housing prices continue to go up exponentially. We have a tremendous housing crisis issue going on here, and it is the majority of the folks that we're seeing in crisis are working adults. They have families. It is people that are on the edge, right? One illness and they're going to be out on their own. That's what we're dealing with here, and I think that is something that every city is probably grappling with in some sense.
It is interesting, and I'll go to you, Khalil, because I know Nashville is just a booming city, but that even as interest rates went up so much in the last year, that home prices didn't really drop that much for people that are looking to buy, and rents didn't come down that much either.
No, fortunately, I rent, and my landlord has not raised rent in 2 years, so I thank you, Steve, for that, landlord of the year. But I have to say that housing is definitely a huge issue out here in Nashville. Affordable housing has been. About 14 years ago, Nashville was labeled the IT city. And I've only lived here for 2 years, but people have been coming in droves to this city for the opportunity that's here. There's no state income tax, which is drawing a lot of people who particularly came and bought up properties during the pandemic. Now, Nashville has a really growing and thriving community of migrants and immigrant communities here. But if tourists come, upwards of 20 million people come to visit, you don't see many homeless folks because Nashville does a good job of, I'm not going to say a good job, I should change my wording. They like to hide the homeless. Mm-hmm. And so they're pushed out to certain parts of town. And on the show, we continue to have people who work with the unhoused community talking about, the caller mentioned that there are some migrants who would rather be on the streets than in shelters because in the shelter system, they're understaffed, they're not very well funded, and through personal experience of having been a bar manager in Albuquerque, talking with unhoused folks, mentioning it's cold outside and maybe you should go to the shelter. The shelter is actually more dangerous than the streets are for them in a lot of situations. So I think it's a whole 100-point restoration we need to do for the whole crisis.
I remember doing a story years ago as a reporter in New York City about the homeless intake center there. And the city said that it was about treating everybody with dignity and respect. And I remember thinking dignity and respect are the last things I would think of in terms of the way people are coming in here every single day, having to go and report and see if they can get housing for the night. But anyway, that is a big issue, I'm sure, across the country. Again, our number this hour, 217-531-2019. I'll give it again, 217-531-2019 if you want to join our conversation. Let's go to Jane, who's in Houston, Texas. Jane, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Thanks very much. I just want to say it breaks my heart this year that our governor in Texas appointed a superintendent of Houston Independent School District and who has no certification and no education background, and he's basically using no research base. He's replacing teachers who are currently salaried with non-experienced teachers at a lower rate. There's a restraining order right now that he cannot do it, but that's what he wants to do. He's closed libraries in schools, and it's all based, he was able to do it based on one school. There are over 274 schools there in Houston here. And instead of improving that school, he went in and he's totally dismantling the sacrifice so many teachers have made. I think of what a teacher who goes into a school and teaches and kids are 2 and 3 grade levels below, and brings those kids up 1 grade level, he considers them ineffective. And he has committed to bringing non-certified teachers in, and he's saying he's going to get a 15% increase.
Jane, let me ask you, do you work in the school system there in Texas?
I don't right now, but I spent 12 years in the trenches.
Okay.
As a teacher, as a mentor teacher, and as a math content specialist.
All right. Well, thank you so much for bringing that call to bringing that issue to our attention there in Texas. Tolliver, we're getting more comments coming in online as well.
Yeah, Brian in Northern Indiana says, here in Northern Indiana, the smoke that drifted down from record Canadian wildfires almost every day this past summer made working outdoors unsafe. People are realizing climate change is impacting every living thing.
Did any of you on our panel experience the smoke from the wildfires? Gemma, you did.
Well, actually, for the first time ever, we didn't because Idaho normally has massive wildfires. So we had a couple of days where we saw some smoke from Canada. But, we had a very bizarre summer due to climate change and that we weren't dealing with massive fire. Mm-hmm. What we have seen, too, is I've been in Boise since 1999. And, you had kind of a fire season, right? Started like in June. It ended by August, September. Fire season can pretty much start in March, and it can go to October, November. And we are in a valley, so then we also experience just that smoke hanging in the air. It is something, though, that what I found interesting about the fires in Canada was that it impacted large East Coast cities like New York City. And it was all of a sudden New Yorkers realized there are wildfires that happen.
I mean, that's the beauty of this show, The Middle, is that most stories that impact the coastal cities are the ones that get all the attention. When there's a huge blizzard in the middle of the country, nobody cares because the media doesn't cover it because they're all based in New York and Washington.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they only care when they're traveling. Let's say that.
Right. That's why we do not.
Some of us in the middle care about it when we're traveling as well. I almost didn't make it back for the show this week because I was in South Dakota.
You were in South Dakota. You had to drive back to Kansas City. Was it bad weather?
We had to drive to Denver to catch a flight to Kansas City because we couldn't get out of Rapid City. It was quite a week.
Wow. Well, Khalil, Gemma, Brian, stand by because we've got more calls coming up, people's top stories of the year. And of course, Tolliver, we're going to hear Brian's top story as well from Kansas City.
I'm praying it's about barbecue. Please.
We'll be right back after this break.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're taking your calls about the biggest news stories to come out of your community this year. Our number this hour, 217-531-2019. Again, 217-531-2019. Our guests are Khalil, Ekulona, who is at Nashville Public Radio, Gemma Gaudette at Boise State Public Radio, and KCUR's Brian Ellison in Kansas City. Before we go back to the phones, let's go to Brian Ellison. Brian, in Kansas City, what would you say was the big story of the year?
Well, not to diminish the very serious stories that some of which we've already talked about here that have happened this year in Kansas City, the serious problems the city is facing, but maybe in part because of those problems, I want to highlight the story that is without question the one that's gotten the most attention nationally, maybe internationally in Kansas City this year, and that, of course, is the budding relationship between Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce and pop
Taylor
legend
Swift.
Taylor Swift.
Right.
And you know, it is a big story. It's an economic story. It's a sports story. It's a cultural story. And it certainly has been the object of fascination. And I have to say joy. You know, we're living in a time when a lot of bad things are happening in the world. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of questions that don't have clear answers. There's a lot of political and partisan divisions. This is not one of those stories. This is a story that has been, for the most part, unquestionably unifying, not only in our metro, but really, I think, around the country, perhaps except for all the people disappointed that they can now not date Travis Kelce or Taylor Swift, depending on their interests.
Yeah. By the way, she has made over $1 billion on her concert tour. She has made over $100 million just on Spotify. Just on Spotify in the last year, Taylor Swift.
Well, and that that part of the story is really important. I mean, she came to Kansas City. She sold out Arrowhead Stadium twice. This was earlier in the year. The Economic Development Council of Kansas City estimates that the financial impact for the city made $48 million outright by her being here. They estimate that the financial impact was $200 million overall by extension, just from her coming and doing 2 concerts here. So then, when she agreed to come back multiple times to watch Kansas City Chiefs games and cheer on Travis Kelce and wear his jersey and mentioned him in a song during one of her performances in Argentina. It has been amazing. Savannah Hawley Bates, one of our reporters here at KCUR, just put up a feature story today about this. Chiefs ticket sales on StubHub tripled for all the remaining home games after she came to the first one. The Google search "Where is Kansas City?" doubled in the 3 months after the first visit, and even Mayor Quentin Lucas told Savannah in an interview that he was visiting Paris. A woman from New Zealand met him, learned he was the mayor of Kansas City, and the first thing she said to him was, "Oh, Taylor Swift." Apparently that's who we are now.
Wow. Okay, the phone calls are coming in. Let's get to them. Claire in Madison, Wisconsin. Hi, Claire. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
I love your show. I would say the biggest story for the whole state of Wisconsin is a recent development. Our great state Supreme Court just ruled that our district legislative maps are unconstitutional and are forcing the great Republicans to they have to be remade. They are unconstitutional.
This is the newly liberal Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin, which is going to have a whole lot of effects probably on things like abortion rights and also, as you say, the district maps in Wisconsin.
Correct.
Is that now?
Yes.
The interesting thing I've always thought about Wisconsin is that it is so evenly divided politically, but often it ends up putting people that are very far to the right or to the left in office statewide. Is what the Supreme Court is doing? How do people feel about? Is it causing tension in Wisconsin because some people might be pretty conservative and some pretty liberal?
Well, certainly Robin Voss, who is the Republican leader of the legislature, is unhappy right now. I think, though, that an indication that the maps were not reflective of the electorate was the fact that we have had a Democratic governor for two consecutive terms, even though Republicans were winning in regional elections. In other words, there are more Democrats in the state.
Mm-hmm. Well,
but
Claire,
they weren't winning.
Yeah, thank you so much for that call. That's a great point, and one that we've certainly has made a lot of news around the country this year. What's been happening in Wisconsin? Let's go to John, who's in Chicago. John, welcome to The Middle. What was the biggest story for you this year?
I would say the biggest unspoken story in the United States is the anti-bipartisan behavior of the Republican Party, that they refuse to come to terms and attempt to form a compromise upon which democratic government is required in order to function effectively.
Tell me more. What do you mean?
I mean that there's a deliberate attempt to force the government into a economic catastrophe in terms of funding the government. There is an antagonism toward There's no desire to come to terms and meet in the middle with problems like the border, like the current foreign situation. So there seems to be a refusal of the Republican Party to attempt a bipartisan solution to the major problems confronting the United States.
John, thank you so much for that call. Let me go to Khalil. Yeah, in Nashville on that one. Nashville is a sort of a blue city in a red state. How do people feel there about what's going on in Washington right now?
A lot of people are upset with inaction that's happening in Washington. And, I'm 50 years old, and I remember a time when the debt limit was not a football-shaped political grenade that each party kind of threw and threatened at each other. It was about having the government work. The ideas on the specifics of how government works is something that's open. But people in Nashville are really trying to fight the state really coming in and taking control of a lot of things. The state took control of the airport earlier this year. A judge ruled you can't do that. The state passed an anti-drag law. A local judge ruled you can't do that. So that's been this issue and this push between kind of local jurisdictions and municipalities and the state itself. And that's kind of a reflection of what's happening nationally.
Gemma?
I would agree with that in Idaho. I think what's interesting here is that we are a supermajority within our legislature Republican, and we are seeing infighting within the Republican Party itself. And this has been bubbling and boiling, and it seems to be coming to a head. Our legislative session starts January 8th-ish, if I remember correctly. And the issue is we've had far-right Republicans get into office, and there's a small faction of them. However, they've caused a lot of ruckus, and they even call our, very, I think, middle-of-the-line Republican governor too liberal. This is so it's interesting to see all of this infighting. Same as Khalil said, though, we just had a ruling come down by a federal judge here in Idaho just 2 days ago, because we had an anti-trans bill that was going to go into effect on January 1, where minors would not be able to get gender-affirming care, puberty blockers, things like that. And where if doctors did this, doctors would be jailed. This federal judge, Windmill, said, really, this violates the 14th Amendment. We saw this after the Civil War. We saw this with interracial couples. That he put this in the same vein as that. So there is now a stay on that. So it's a very interesting time, not just in Idaho, but I think within our country.
We got some voicemails as well, and I want to listen to one that came in from Grant from Iowa, who says his top story is about local environmental action. Listen.
The most important story in my community was the local residents, through our city government, adopting a climate action plan. Now that we have a plan, we can start moving in a coordinated direction.
Brian Ellison in Kansas City, have there been any actions like that there, or is this something that people are concerned about?
Well, I think folks are very concerned about environmental action, action for racial justice and equity, a lot of sort of local concerns that often don't rise to the attention or to the agreement of a very similar dynamic in Missouri and in Kansas, as we've heard about in Idaho and Tennessee. Supermajority Republican control of the House and the Senate in Missouri and in Kansas. There's a Democratic governor now in Kansas, but not in Missouri. In fact, there are no statewide elected office holders in Missouri who are Democrats. They're all Republicans. But I want to say, and maybe this is an encouraging word to that earlier caller, Jeremy, I think one of the interesting things that has happened the last couple of years in Missouri is that because of that sort of Republican infighting that Gemma described happening in Idaho, there has in fact that has happened in Missouri as well, but it has forged an almost strange bipartisanship among some Republicans, so-called moderate Republicans, along with some Democrats, to actually pass some really significant legislation, or at least to modify the legislation that's going to pass in ways that are more palatable to Democrats. And so it's been an interesting time. The state budget would not have passed this year in Missouri. The governor's proposed budget that Democrats largely supported would not have passed without Democrats and Republicans coming together to do it. And so it's an interesting time, and maybe some basic model for some sort of future work in the middle, as you say.
Well, right. And by the way, the reason that the government didn't shut down and the reason that we didn't default on the nation's debt was because of people in the broad middle just voting these things through while the far right and far left voted against. I think we have time for another call here. Let's go to Tracy, who is near Joliet, Illinois. Hi, Tracy. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Right. Our local news story for the year was the murder and stabbing of the young Palestinian boy. I believe he was 6, and his mother by their landlord for being Palestinian and Muslim. I worked for almost 10 years across the street from that home, and it shook me and everybody I know to the core.
Since that has happened, had there been able to be conversations among people about what's going on in Israel and in Gaza, or is it just getting so tense that you can't even talk about it?
No, there is a lot of conversation, and also, and more importantly, we've always discussed, not more importantly, but as important is we had discussed previously how that landlord was off, and it drove home the see something, say something aspect, and the war in Gaza is just horrific, and the fact that we here can't know what they're going through, much less the displaced people. It's a huge topic of conversation with the people I know.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tracy. Really appreciate that call. I'll go to our panel on this. This has been such a huge issue over the last few months. I mean, we did our first episode about the war in Israel and Gaza just right after it started in early October, and the calls were incredible from people of all different views coming around the country, but it has only just expanded in terms of how difficult these conversations are on college campuses and other places. Have any of you been covering that or have heard from people about how this is going?
Well, we've had a lot of folks come to us and ask when we were going to do a show on have an episode about this strictly. There's been a lot of coverage, great coverage done by WPLN, Nashville Public Radio reporters on the Jewish communities and the Palestinian communities and Muslim communities and how they're responding to this tragedy and how they're coming together to create conversation. But something that I want to do, when I heard about that 8-year-old boy being murdered, I had to take a seat because a little boy who is really just beginning out in life is murdered for something happening halfway across the globe because Americans, most of us, don't have any context of how to understand this thing and this crisis. And a lot of times we feel like we're distanced from these things. We can make a comment either on a platform like this or social media, but we have to recognize that this world is a very, very small place. And these are things that are happening to people that are directly related to us. And for This is Nashville, I want us to have a very deep conversation about these issues, about how we're all connected in this way, not just necessarily kind of cosmetically talking about these issues and where Americans lie on it politically, because I think this is a human issue more so than anything political.
Yeah, absolutely. We were getting some more comments in online on Twitter. Kristen writes, one of the most impactful stories in Kansas and the U.S. this year had to be the raid of the Marion Recorder newspaper and its subsequent fallout. Brian, just give me the short 15-second version of what that was.
Yeah, the Marion County Record, a community small-town newspaper, was raided by the police department of that town in what turned out to be the potential for negative coverage of the police chief, who's a former Kansas City police detective, as notably. And of course, it raised all sorts of First Amendment violations. How did they get the warrant to do that? In the end, all of the evidence that was gathered has been handed back and destroyed. The fallout continues, and it raised a lot of questions about local journalism and its future in small towns in America.
Well, before we close out this hour and close out 2023 on The Middle, we have time, Tolliver, for a quiz for our guests.
Yes, indeed. All right, this one's multiple choice. What was the most searched news story of 2023?
Ooh.
Feel free to jump in when you have the answer. I have a shiny new The Middle mug for whoever gets the answer right first, so jump in, okay? Okay, first, the Titan submersible. Second, Hurricane Hillary. Third, Israel and Gaza. Fourth, Hurricane Idalia. Jump in.
I would say
Israel and Gaza.
I would say Israel and Gaza.
Are you sure it wasn't Taylor Swift?
Yeah,
I was going to say, why isn't Taylor Swift on
Wait,
that?
Khalil, what was yours?
I was thinking maybe the Montgomery Brawl, but
oh my god!
Oh yeah,
that was a big one for me for sure.
So what was
it?
it?
A big one. Interesting.
The answer is Israel and Gaza.
Okay,
that's number one. Yeah,
That's
pretty obvious.
That restores a little bit of confidence in people that they actually do care about that as the most important.
Oh, they absolutely do.
Exactly.
Well, I want to thank all of you. Khalil Ekulona, host of This is Nashville on Nashville Public Radio. Khalil, thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And Brian, I'm glad that Taylor Swift brought a lot of money to Kansas City, but hopefully she can run some routes and catch some balls. You guys need receivers bad.
He's just saying that because she left Nashville long ago, and he's upset about that. Gemma Gaudette, host of Idaho Matters on Boise State Public Radio, and Brian Ellison at KCUR in Kansas City. Thanks to both of you as well.
Thank you so much. It's been
Jeremy.
A pleasure.
And Happy New Year. Tolliver, what do we have on tap for next week's show?
Well, we're talking about these newly popular drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy that are being used by so many people in this country. There's a shortage. So we're asking, what do you think about this new kind of drug that's being used by Americans to lose weight?
You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE and leave a message or join us live next week. By the way, we have a weekly newsletter. It's free. You can sign up at listentothemiddle.com. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Joanne Jennings, Harrison Patino, John Barth, and Danny Alexander. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Thanks also to Nashville Public Radio, iHeartMedia, and the more than 370 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. By the way, that number is going to go up next week. I'm Jeremy Hobson. From all of us at The Middle, Happy New Year. I'll talk to you next week, which is also next year.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. See Kane Brown, Parker McCollum, Riley Green, Shabuzi, Dylan Scott, Russell Dickerson, Gretchen Wilson, Chase Matthew, Lauren Elena. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping on another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.